Hi, I'm Moonjong Kim from Physics Department at Post-Tech, and it's a pleasure to present my research here in SI. Today I'm going to talk about how neuroembedding of research papers reveals characteristics of policy research institutes. Governments of many developed countries regularly evaluate the work done by policy research institutes. Until recently, the conduct of these evaluation exercises has been founded on the so-called peer review methodology, where research products submitted by institutions are evaluated by appointed panels of experts. However, this kind of evaluation has several limitations. First, it's hard to consider every paper in the evaluation. Second, qualitative evaluation can be biased. Therefore, we can say that a quantitative metric is needed to complete the qualitative evaluation. Yet, there are no sufficient quantitative metrics which can be applied to policy research. Since policy research by national institutes is rarely published in academic journals and conference proceedings, it's hard to use bibliometrics such as citations or impact factors in policy research. So, in order to solve these problems, we suggest using report2vec neuroembedding method to grasp the trend and dynamics of the research paper quantitatively. Using report2vec, we can represent documents with vectors in the semantic space. Vectors trained by report2vec contain the meaning of documents. While vectors of similar documents got closer, irrelevant documents moved apart. In order to check whether report2vec can identify the characteristics of Policy Research Institute, we analyzed more than 20,000 papers from 27 policy research institutes in South Korea, which were written between 2000 and 2020. The abstract of papers from these institutes are separated into morphemes with Korean morphology analysis, and only nouns are used as input variables to report2vec. For visualization, I reduced the dimension of the vectors into two-dimensional vector space using UMAP. Each dot represents a paper, and we color document vectors from the same institutes with the same color. And also, institutes in similar fields have similar colors. So, as you can see, vectors with similar colors are clustered well. From this plot, we predict that the mean vector of each institute can represent the identity of each institute. So we define the mean vector of the paper published from Institute I as an institute vector of the Institute I. To check this hypothesis, I did hierarchical clustering to the institute vector from each institute. As you can see, institutes that treat similar topics are in the same cluster. For example, this first beige cluster is a set of institutes of education. For validation, I calculated the similarity between the classification from this hierarchical clustering and the classification by government using element-centric similarity. So, as you can see in this write-down graph, the element-centric similarity between hierarchical clustering and the classification by government is significantly larger, which means that the classification from mean vector and classification from the government is significantly similar. Therefore, we concluded the institute vector can represent the main topic of each institute. Then, we also defined the inconsistency between the topic of the paper and the overall topic of the institute using report2vec. Since the cosine distance between two vectors indicates how irrelevant two documents are, we define the inconsistency as cosine distance between the mean vector of the institute and the vector of the specific paper. High inconsistency is indicative of the topic of the paper being uncommon. So we believe that this metric can give us the intuition about the diversity of the topic in policy research. So we first thought about the factors that can affect the properties of papers. First of all, lots of experimental and observational research on groups reveals that team size is actually related with lots of properties of papers, such as citations or disruption. Similarly, the diversity of authors, such as gender diversity or ethnic diversity, are also revealed that they can affect the academic impact of the publication. Therefore, we try to check whether these factors can affect the inconsistency we defined before. So we try to describe team size using the number of authors from the research institute and the diversity of the group as the ratio of authors from external affiliation. Also, to consider the properties of the research field of each institute, we added research institute and the year the paper was published as an input variable. Then we regressed between these three factors and the inconsistency. As a result, we revealed that the ratio of authors from external affiliation is positively correlated with the inconsistency, while the number of authors from the research institute is negatively correlated. Both estimated coefficients have very low p-value, which means that the result is quite significant. This research showed that a large team size of internal members causes fixating on similar research topics, while external members can contribute to the diverse research. Therefore, we can say that the concept of open innovation is also applied in policy research. External members can bring a new idea or topic to the Policy Research Institute. The coefficient of a research institute and a year represents how distant the papers of the research institutes are from the mean vector on average in that year. Therefore, this coefficient means how diverse the topics of the papers from the institutes are in a specific year. So we call this the topic diversity. We then plotted the coefficients of each institute as a time series and figured out that two institutes researching related fields also have similar diversity trends. The first column is the diversity time series of two institutes, where the research field is related with diplomacy, and the second column is institutes related with land development, and the last column is related with education. This is reasonable because institutes in similar fields affected by the same issue easily. In summary, first we trained 200-dimensional vectors by 20,000 papers from 27 policy research institutes. Second, we did hierarchical clustering on the mean vector of each institute, and the classification we got from the mean vector is significantly similar with the classification by Korean government. From this, we concluded that institute vector can represent the identity of a policy research institute. We then also defined the inconsistency of the topic of the paper. Then we figured out that as external members increase, the inconsistency increases, and as internal members increase, the inconsistency decreases. This research shows us that open innovation in policy research. Lastly, the coefficients of the specific institute and year represent the topic diversity. Similar research institutes have similar topic diversity trends, which is reasonable because institutes in similar fields are affected by the same issue easily. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and if you have any comments or questions, feel free to ask in the session. Thank you.